Yeah, so I primarily only use reactive forms. I've used template forms, but kind of minimal. We have had to do a lot of complex stuff. There's a lot of craziness that we've had to do with forms over the years. And so reactive forms work best for us.
So, as a course creator, what are you teaching people right now about AI and maybe about like using it as a co-pilot rather than a crutch?
Yeah, I don't really, the way that I see it, at least right now for the time we're at right now, I feel like we still, like I said, we kind of still need to know this stuff, right? Like if I'm telling cursor, hey, build me this thing, and it just happened to me today where it kind of like did some weird import with a component, then created a promise on it, and I'm like, what are you doing that for? That I don't want that, know?
Yeah.
And it's like we still need right now we're in the state of we still need to understand how everything works.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dev Life podcast. So, Matt, I have to ask because you know how, like, as a programmer, it's really easy to get into this rhythm of just kind of like taking the tickets that you get and you just sort of start pumping them out. There's not really a whole lot of forethought necessarily on really like delivering the best experience you can for the customer, right? Like sometimes this happens. You're just so in that rhythm of like, take the ticket, pump it out, right? Like a feature factory type feeling. But that's not really the best situation, right? Like we all want to be in a place where, that ultimate goal is to really create like this ultimate experience that's kind of like seamless and more inclusive and best customer experience we can possibly create, right? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But so that's what we wanted to talk about today is kind of bridging that gap of going from just I don't know, somewhat mindlessly taking on these tasks to kind of moving into this place where you can be more aware and cognizant of actually creating this ultimate really good customer experience. And we're excited because we have someone on the show today who I think is really showing how to do that. And a lot of what his job is creating that customer experience. So he really focuses a lot on kind of those like hidden gems of the Angular ecosystem. So we're talking about things like high performance logic of the CDK or reactive future of what signals can help us do. And I think accessibility is something we really easily overlook, right? Like accessibility seems to be like, oh, we'll worry about that later, right?
Yeah, yeah, like what you're saying, I totally deal with. I think every software engineer does. We just get in this pattern of another ticket, just knock it out, follow the AC word for word. So hearing that Brian's going to talk to us about that has me really excited because that is certainly something I do every day.
For sure. So, everybody to help us talk about all of this, to kind of navigate this conversation, we have Brian Treese here. So, you are currently the UX lead at your company, and I'm going to have you explain a little bit more about that here in a second. But also, you make really great courses. I believe I found them on Udemy and then Pluralsight. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point.
Yeah.
You have a great YouTube channel. And then on top of all of that, you're an Angular GDE. So you've just got all of this stuff going on, but you're just deeply passionate about how we refine our craft and really approach, all these things that we've been talking about. But yeah, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is a cool opportunity.
Awesome. Do you want to kind of explain a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was kind of forced to because I don't know when I my last year in college, I kind of maxed out my student loans and got into a point where I needed to get a job, and I got a job for a guy who had a company that he was running out of his garage, which I thought was really cool. And I wasn't doing a lot of code, but I built out my first website. I think I used Dreamweaver and stuff, and he liked it, so he hired me, and I sat right in between him and another developer who'd worked in the industry for a long time and had to figure out how to do things, and it was kind of crazy. But I started out doing design first and then learning how to implement the code. And things like accessibility and, frameworks and stuff were, this is a long time ago now. This is like 20 years ago. So things were a lot different. And yeah, I just kind of realized that I was going to have to learn a lot on my own and figure things out. And that's kind of how it's been ever since. So yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome. I remember Dreamweaver as well, and Left Justified. We had FileZilla, and
Yeah.
it's gotten a lot better since then.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And was we weren't even doing responsive design so much, It was like
Yeah.
right at the time when that was kind of all coming out. We didn't have media queries and CSS, so it was kind of a weird time. It was actually simpler in a lot of ways, but yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
the story that I always bring up that's kind of crazy is I used Photoshop to design things, but the developer that I sat next to actually had to teach me how to use the slice tool because I didn't even know what the slice tool was. So, I don't know if anybody knows about the slice tool anymore, but
Yeah, you'd cut your face onto someone else, and then be all of those lines and stuff.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty
Whatever. Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
With AI now, you can just in 3 words, or yeah, just like change it to me or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Change that to look like that.
I'm not sure what you even use Photoshop for anymore now. Maybe actually for editing photos like it was created for or something, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it has some pretty good AI tools too.
That's true, yeah. I don't we don't really have a lot of Adobe products anymore, that I use anyway. So, yeah.
You're often thinking about like the feel of the interface for users, for customers, but like one topic in the Angular community that I always kind of laugh because it seems like at least from my perspective, like especially if you've attended a conference like ng-conf, all someone has to do is say like reactive forms or template driven forms, and all of a sudden there's like this huge debate, right? It turns into like this argument. So I think it's kind of funny. But one thing that you're really big on right now is signal based forms. So how do you feel like that's really a game changer? How is it, making things different for users, for customers compared to that traditional reactive or template driven form?
Yeah, so I primarily only use reactive forms. I've used template forms, but kind of minimal. We have had to do a lot of complex stuff. There's a lot of craziness that we've had to do with forms over the years. And so reactive forms work best for us. But like once we made the trend, I'm pretty lucky. I should start by saying I'm pretty lucky to work for a company that's small and that's really all about advancing the technology forward. We don't want to fall very far behind. So we're actually able to always take advantage of the latest and greatest. So as soon as Signals came out, we started transitioning. We used their migration tools and kind of migrated our entire code base over. And we've been able to stay ahead of the game, and even when the stuff was experimental, we were watching the releases and we're like, oh, like computed is no longer experimental. Oh, we've been using that for years, So we switched to Signals a long time ago, and Forms was kind of the only part of the framework that we're like still dealing with observables and kind of needing to figure out, oh, okay, well, when this control changes, how are we going to update the signal and stuff like that? So it just kind of felt gross to still use reactive forms, honestly. So, it's been really cool to see how things are changing. And once you're in the signals state of mind, like you don't want to, in a lot of cases, you don't really want to have to switch back to working with observables and stuff like that. So, now it just feels like everything's straightforward because you're already in the state of, like I said, the state of mind of signal. So, okay, this is going to be a computed, or this is going to be a linked signal, or, we'll rely on an effect or something like that. And it all just fits together. And I feel like it really simplifies like how you set up a form and use form controls, and you're just dealing with signals. So you can set values and then update values, and it's just all really easy. So yeah, I've been really stoked on it and seeing how it's taking shape.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. So I assume you all are on Angular 21 then, if you're using.
Yeah. And I forget which minor we're on, but yeah, we're pretty up to date.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely want to upgrade. Hearing that,
Yeah.
I've been pushing for that.
Yeah,
uh,
like I'm actually really excited about 22 because
yeah.
in 22 it looks like we're going to be able to just straight up use custom controls that we built with signal with reactive forms, which is mostly our code base. So things will just work, because we've talked about that. Like, man, I wish I could have this custom control work in both reactive forms and signal forms, but I can't. So I got to stay with reactive forms. Well, in 22, it looks like we're going to have that, which is really awesome. I'm excited about that.
It is
Oh
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
so cool. I remember the B21 release party with the video game version of Mark. That was so cool.
That's
But
awesome. Like, just what a good feeling to work with a company that is so supportive of being, with the latest and greatest.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I definitely feel lucky in that way for sure. But it also means that it's cool in another aspect that, we have to stay up on where it's headed and what's out there. Some companies you can kind of get stale and it doesn't really matter, but for us, we got to stay on top of it. Yeah.
love it.
so for upgrading your previous forms, was it a major refactor? And what did that look like?
It definitely will be. We haven't changed a lot of forms. What we've kind of done is we've started anytime we'd reach for a form control or we'd put in a new form, we just use signal forms if we can. I mean, because of the fact that we haven't really had the ability to intermix things. We use Angular libraries that we share across like 5 or 6 different Angular apps. And so we have a set of form controls. And if they react or if they're dependent on like control value accessor or something like that, or reactive forms module, then we just kind of had to say, oh, guess we can't use this right now. So, we haven't really migrated forms. We've kind of just been adding new forms and new controls with signal forms so far.
Cool.
So yeah,
Well,
there's still a lot to figure out.
so I assume it's just way more convenient. What's the best thing about it?
My favorite thing is that, like I said, it's just signals. So, like, you create uh, a signal for the shape of your form, and then you just, pass it to the form function, and now it's a form. That's it. Like before, you used to have to, okay, is this a form group? And like if you're updating something, if you're updating logic based on how controls change, that used to be really hard. Where I feel like, you used to have to set the value of something else or mark it as touched and then update value and validity and all these concepts, which you just don't have to do any of that stuff anymore, which is awesome. You just set it and you're done. I don't know. All that stuff is way simpler to me. So yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna kind of like flip that a tiny bit because here you are saying it's simple, but I am curious because you have made, all these courses and you have your YouTube channel, and I think teaching and education is something that you have a strong passion for. But have you found anything that is tripping people up as they're making that transition to signals? Is there something that you're commonly finding is tricky that you've kind of figured out a way to teach people or mentor them through that?
Well, I don't know if I've necessarily found a way to mentor people through it, but the biggest thing I think is when you get into large, complicated forms, and I made a couple of videos on this, but like, how do you handle, say you have an address form? This is like a pretty clear example, but you have an address form, and that's going to be a component that you can use in several different forms. Like, but it may be nested way down in a larger form. Like, how do you isolate everything related to that form so it has a signal? It's like street one, street two, zip code, all that sort of thing. And the validation related to that is all tied to that form group. How do you store that with that form group and then use that as part of a larger form that, you know, has its own set of, it may have other form groups associated with it, other fields, whatever it is, and how do you make that work? And so I've kind of worked through some concepts like that because these are real problems that we have in a lot of our forms. We actually have this exact problem. We have an address form component, and how are we going to make that work? And so I don't even know if I found the best way. I've just found a way that kind of feels all right, but maybe doesn't feel great. And I even mentioned that to Mark Thompson when I did the GDE interview. He was like asking one of the things that we'd love guidance on, and that's kind of one with signal forms that I hope they kind of come up with something for that because I think that's a common pattern, and you know, just trying to figure out the best way to do that. I think is something to focus on.
That's awesome. So are you a GDE now?
Yeah, I am just as of
Oh,
January or February of this year.
awesome. Congrats. Are
Yeah,
you going
thanks.
to the conference in Vegas?
I'm not. No, no.
Well, I'll see you around. That's so cool, man. That is great feedback. I'm curious, have you done much with Signal stores?
No, I've done nothing with that. I'm more on kind of what I would consider the front of the front end. I don't really do a lot of like interaction with like API and state, stuff like that. I'm normally more just kind of UI focused. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to get into Signal forms. I recently made a Signal store for multi-step forms mixed with the default, like the observable version of forms, and it's a mess. And so I think that there's a world where a multi-step form works much better with Signal stores, but
Yeah.
I'll need to play with that.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds challenging for sure.
So another thing we wanted to ask you about too, because I know you've talked about this, but it's the CDK. So, and I think maybe it'll help some of our listeners may not be familiar with what, when we talk about CDK, what is this? It's the Angular Component Dev Kit, but can you kind of start us off before we really dig into your feelings about it and things you've learned with it? Do you want to just kind of explain to listeners what it is and a little bit of kind of context for us?
Yeah, sure. I would say it's a set of behaviors, maybe like UI patterns and utilities that, are for things that are otherwise kind of like hard to do or that take time or that you got to figure out. And, the Angular team's already figured these things out, especially with like material, like, and a lot of these things in the dev kit are actually, they come from material. They're pieces that they could kind of pull and use in material, but maybe ran into issues where it was too opinionated. There was too much code around it that then made it hard to work with. So they kind of abstracted these pieces out maybe. But, if the Google team has figured it out and put it to use in some of their tools, it's probably pretty good, right? It's probably better than what I could come up with. And just plugging the CDK in, knowing what's available, and then when you go to build a concept, you just reach for the CDK first. If they have it, great. You just figure out how you implement it in whatever it is that you're building and you get off and running. That's what's super cool about it to me.
Very cool. So, what is one specific utility in the CDK that you think is criminally underused?
That's a good one. I think the focus trap, like it's super easy to, well, first of all, what is a focus trap? A focus trap's like an accessibility feature. Like say you open a modal, you want to keep the user focused and circularly navigating it in that modal, right? You don't want to go back to the background. So focus trap is a really cool feature. I think you just put the directive on, and now all of a sudden, once you set focus within it, you're just stuck within that focus trap. And then it has another cool feature of like recapturing the thing that opened it when you close it. So if I hit escape to close my modal, I pop right back to the button that opened it. So focus trap is a really good one. I think the breakpoint observer is really cool, and maybe a lot of people don't even know that it exists, or maybe they do. I don't know, but I think a lot of times in Angular things are different. You can't just necessarily be like CSS is going to hide all the stuff and open all the stuff. Sometimes you just maybe need to serve up a different component or something like that, and that's where the breakpoint observer comes into play because now you hit a certain breakpoint, and okay, here I'm going to have this component. So those are features that I don't know if everybody uses or is even aware of, but they're there and they make things pretty easy. I also use the overlay a lot, so I've had to get in deep with the overlay. So that's one that's out there too.
Very cool.
So you mentioned material, and see, this is actually something that my team has kind of been weighing out is like we are trying to modernize and like update our code base. So there has been discussion of, possibly bringing in material, but how would you suggest the team makes that decision? Like, is there, what you mentioned how material is a bit more opinionated, but what else? Like, there are other teams like mine, and they're trying to make this decision of like, how can we modernize? How can we really make this a better user experience? Like, when it comes to push or shove, what are really some of the decisions that you've seen or that teams might face to know we should go with CDK or we should go with material?
I don't think it's really an either or. I think like for us, we've tried to use material and we've actually I think we used one of the components. I can't remember for what, but what happens with us or like in my experience is that we have a really specific design. And if I can't customize material very easily, if it's really hard to customize the component that I'm dealing with, and I have to do a lot of overriding to work within those parameters, it kind of just like doesn't work. But I mean, if you can take advantage of it and are okay with maybe, being able to sacrifice a little bit of it, like material is like awesome for that. Like, you can pretty much get the look and feel you want, but it just kind of depends on, are your guidelines super specific to where you're probably not going to compromise from what the original design looks like. That gets harder to use material components. And the CDK is more, I see the CDK more as like, I'm going to go implement some functionality, and I just need to get up and running with what that functionality is. And I'm maybe going to do something totally different than what the CDK or what material has to offer. So then I'll go look at like what's available first in the CDK and see if there's something along the lines, or maybe a combination of pieces that I can use to kind of get up and running. But material is amazing. And honestly, if you can use material, I would use it. Like there's so much there, and it's awesome, and it works really well, but it just kind of depends on your design constraints. And I mean, the theming has gotten a lot better since I've last, kind of dug in. So, you know, it may be good enough now, honestly, for our use cases. I just haven't torn into it recently. So, yeah.
So let's say there's a team that's really embedded in like old bootstrap, just legacy code, what would your advice be for them, like to switch to the CDK or material? Like, should they even try?
That's tough. I don't know. For cases like that, personally, I feel like maybe just exploring it a component at a time. If you're tasked with updating something, in the UI, you look at it at that point and you go, can we modernize this? Can we make this better? I mean, that's kind of the way we try to operate a lot of times. We go in and sure, we've written things 5 years ago that we go into now to change, and we look at them and go, oh, this is horrible. We can do this better. And we take the time normally to, make it better at that point. So I think it's unless you have a really big budget, it's going to be hard to be like, let's revamp this entire app. I do think that Angular is really cool about the team has done some really cool stuff with the migration tools that they have. So like when you go to modernize your app to Signals, you have all those migration tools. You can do all the view queries migration. Trying to remember what all the input, like the input signal inputs migration, all those tools are really awesome. But there's not really like a good way to do that with something like Material or the CDK. Then you kind of got to figure that out. Yeah.
I love that. As you're talking right now, I'm thinking about what about Bob? That scene when he's like, baby step to the door, baby step to the wherever, it's like, oh yeah, like, and you started off by saying this, you guys are little by little switching to your signal forms, and little by little, maybe switching from Bootstrap to the CDK. I think that's incredible advice.
Yeah.
Sometimes engineers like me think that it all has to happen at the same time, which might at times be a recipe for a mess.
Yeah. Well, we definitely think that too, and that's like a battle, right? Because as a developer, you want to write the cleanest, most modern code possible, and sometimes that means, oh, but this form over here, or this piece is not as good as it can be, right? And that's like that constant battle. And we've gotten better about being like, okay, it's okay. We'll get to that when we can. We'll get there. So, sometimes for the most part, we're pretty good about keeping our code base like very uniform. But in some cases, it just doesn't make sense yet. You got to go piece by piece, you know? So, yeah.
I find that like I just remember being a brand new developer, my first job, first dev job, and my mentor at the time was really big on just reminding me all the time, like, I'd get my task and I'd kind of have that like massive imposter syndrome feeling and just like overwhelm. And we'd get on a call and he'd be like, well, but this is like developer 101, you just have to break everything down into the smallest pieces. And it's like, just take one step and then take the next one. And that really is like, I feel like you can apply that to so much of what we do. So like, here you are talking about just taking that next step and like not feeling like everything has to be done right now. It's just one thing, then the next. So another thing that you have really been big on, and I think really does take our jobs as developers from that feature factory, mode to actually being more aware of the customer. And it's so funny because it's something I think we're all aware of, and yet it's always that version 2 thing, and that's accessibility. But something I feel like the Angular team really lately has kind of been talking about more lately. Like it's not new by any means, but they've just been talking about it a lot more, and it's ARIA. So, can you give us an intro to what even is that and why do we need to know about it?
Yeah, sure. ARIA itself stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications, I think. And like, I mean, just before we even get into it, I mean, your goal is not to use ARIA. I think from an accessibility standpoint, from a developer, you want to use the right markup for the job. That way the computer just knows, hey, this is or whatever technology it is, whatever assistive technology, screen reader, whatever it is going to know, oh, this is the meaning behind this thing that we're looking at. This is a form control, this is a select, this is a button. And when it comes to Angular or any sort of front end framework, really, with Angular, you all know you could take a click event binding and put it on a div if you want. So, but from the system technology's point of view, that div is just a div. It's generic. It has no semantic meaning. So they don't know how to announce that to the consumer. So ARIA is a way of, allowing you to build, say you need more rich functionality and you need to build a custom control. Like one of the things that we run into is needing a really powerful autocomplete that we just can't get natively. So we have to build that. And that means we have to build all of that accessibility into it. And before Angular ARIA came along, I mean, that was a lot of work. The W3C has a patterns website. So every time we come to understanding what these patterns are that we needed to build, I'd go look at the patterns and be like, okay, I got to implement all of this logic here. And, there's several pieces, several layers and tying IDs to this and that are totally unrelated in different parts of the code base and stuff like that. And so that's where Angular ARIA comes into play. And I wasn't sure until I really dove in and I was like, oh man, this makes like all these things I've done over the years so much easier now. And so I'm really stoked about that as well. It's kind of like the CDK, but for accessibility, it's like an accessibility layer. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Like I know there's probably some engineers, out there who are like, "Hey, I work for a small startup. We don't have time for accessibility." But it feels like this is more like, "Hey, more of a reason to make time." And in an ideal internet, everything would be accessible. So I love to
Yeah.
see that.
And I would say with like, yeah, I think that you're talking about the time of building it in. I mean, I think it's really important if realistically, if every team can have like a champion for accessibility, it makes everything easier because it's always a lot more work to go back into something after you've built it and try to put accessibility into it. And I think that's one of the really powerful things with what they're doing with ARIA is I don't have to think about it very much. I just go look at their docs on how to implement this and plug it in and I'm done. So it really is helping with that amount of time. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked on that one for sure.
Awesome. So how do you balance like the fast-paced nature of bleeding edge Angular features with the strict, often slow-moving compliance requirements of enterprise accessibility?
That again, I'm kind of lucky because I work for a small team. So and we kind of have free reign. It's like we want to keep things moving forward quickly, and so we're able to stay on the forefront of that. I think you know for most teams, it probably is just a matter of being aware of what is coming, and as soon as it's available for you to use, if you know about it and you know of it, and the things as soon as that thing becomes available for you to use as part of your, you know, requirements, now you can just implement it and go. I think that things get a lot more stable when you have to wait around. So, like for us, we've put stuff into play, and then updates come, especially with like reactive forms or sorry, signal forms, and they change it. So now I got to update it. For if you're kind of waiting around until it's ready to go, and no longer experimental or in developer preview or whatever, you can just implement it and not have to worry about it, right? So, but yeah, I for us, like I said, we're lucky that we just get to kind of always use the latest and greatest. So that was a little bit tough to for me to answer.
Do you all use AI over there to help you like stay on the latest and greatest? Is that like one of your speed up tools for it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you have to, right?
Yeah,
Like,
today.
I mean, I think this is one of for me personally, I think this is one of the hardest things in development is that, every day you're reading articles about like jobs are getting cut, jobs are going away. And on top of it, you read about companies like large companies like Meta's doing this, Google's doing this, in terms of AI. And it's like it can seem like doom and gloom and like people are not even touching code anymore, right? But then in your day-to-day workflow, like we use Cursor and I'll go tell it to implement a feature and it totally messes it up, right? And I'm like, man, this is brutal, but I'll keep going down this path of like, no, that's not what I want. I know, and I'll work with it for a while and have problems, right? But then other days I'll go in and be like, okay, there's an example of exactly what I want to do, and it's over here. And I ask it to kind of do the similar thing, and it does it perfectly. And I'm like, oh, my job is gone. It's kind of this
Yeah,
thing of like, the AI thing. So, I've been doing this for like 20 years and this AI time is super weird and it's a roller coaster almost every day. So I think we try to use and try as many AI tools as possible. So
I love that.
What you mentioned Cursor, but I'm curious, what other ones are you finding really help? Or alternatively, which ones are you finding are kind of just overhyped? Like, have you found any that you've really been loving?
Cursor for me was the game changer, but
Yeah.
I've been using Cursor for like a year and um right after I started using Cursor, Claude Code was getting a ton of uh exposure and I was like, okay, I got to try Cloud Code. But we run on Windows machines. I don't know if you guys use Macs or Windows or what you use, but
I was on Mac and now I have a new job and we're doing Windows.
there you
Yeah,
go.
I'm still on Mac.
Yeah. So if I had a Mac, it would have been a little bit easier. It was really hard to set up and get working correctly. So I spent some time trying to figure it out and ran into a lot of issues and then was like, all right, I gotta just wait. And so I kind of did that and then never really went back to Claude Code. And Claude Code everybody kind of quieted down, but I do feel like Claude Code is making a major r- push now. And so it's like, yeah, I probably need to check it out again. But I don't know if do you guys use Claude Code?
Yeah.
So you do. I use Cursor, and there is a big debate between me and some people on this. So I got to be careful to take sides because I don't want to offend people. Like I think both sides are really good, and it comes down ultimately, in my mind, to whether you rather use the CLI or the IDE. Because I think Cursor is amazing for the IDE. You can see your changes, you make them.
Yeah.
And I know that people who love their CLI commands love Cursor,
Yeah.
Cloud Code. Sorry. But I am curious what LLM you've found to be the best for you inside of Cursor, or are you using like Auto?
That's funny that you bring that up because to me, what made it so cool was their first composer model.
Yeah,
It was so fast. Like it didn't work amazing in terms of like if I tried to make it do a large, complicated feature, did not work amazing and it would not get good results. But if I learned that I could work really fast and tell it to do small features and it would just bust them out and I'd be like, yep, this looks great. Or I just kind of would consistently work with it. And I've tried to, I guess I'm like trying to train myself to go AI first. You know what I mean? So I think you still have to understand the stuff, but going like AI first and just kind of yeah, I might be making a pretty small CSS change or something. And I'm like, let's just tell it in plain English what I want it to do. And that's where the Composer one model was like awesome. It was lightning fast. Now they've switched to like what their 2 or their two model. And it's great. Like it does a better job, but it's a little bit slower. And I was just talking with my coworker today about like, yeah, this is just slower, but it still works amazing, it's just slower. So I don't know. Every day is a constant try something new, try this thing, try that. Let's see how this goes. So
and we are in such a similar boat right now. I've been playing around with Composer 2 versus Opus 5.6 versus GPT 5.4. And yeah, I've been finding like some of the older things like Composer 1 are a little faster for the quick get it dones, right? Opus
yeah, but
4.6 is, or five, yeah, 4.6 is so expensive and
yeah,
slow, but it's good.
yeah.
And same with GPT
Yeah, that's what
5.4.
I was just gonna say. Last month, I went heavily with Opus for a while and was like, "Oh shoot, I'm spending a lot of money here." So yeah, this is tough.
So,
That's the balance that we're walking every day. Like, is this gonna work? Because you
Yeah.
put all you use all these tokens and you spend maybe a couple of hours and get down a path and you're like, this isn't going to work. I went all the way down this path and it's not right. Yeah.
Love that conversation. And this is something we've actually had previous guests on the show talking about is how our job really has changed from like we don't have to focus so much on that CSS and those little things because I think more than anything, AI is letting us be an architect, right? And do these like bigger design, bigger decision things. So, how would you say that? Like, what do you see in the next 5 years? Like, what's kind of your prediction for if that's the shift we've seen? How do you think things are going to keep changing? Or do you think we've kind of capped off? Like, do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah. That's tough. I mean, I don't know if I have a good answer on that. I mean, I guess nobody does. But man, I think what's going to happen is it's going to just get more stable. Like, and that's the approach I've tried to take is like letting things, there's hype every day. Like right now, I think we're like in this claw phase, open claws, and like Manus and I think it's Claude Cowork or whatever. All these things that are trying to do this, like do these all these things for you. Like that's like in the phase we're in right now. But like with development tools, it was like Claude Code bubbled to the top, and then Cursor bubbled to the top, and so it's like you kind of have to let this stuff bubble to the top, and then I think like somebody's gonna, a few of these tools are gonna win, and we're either gonna be writing code or somebody's gonna get so good at writing code for us that we're not gonna have to even look at code anymore, I guess. And that's possible. I think everything's possible. Like we just may be writing a lot more code a lot faster in 5 years, or we may be not even hands on with the code in 5 years. But somebody's going to kind of bubble to the top, and I think they're going to kind of figure out this pricing model with tokens. Like right now, I think that the main problem with AI is you can spend a lot of money in tokens and not get the results you want. And I think that's got to get figured out before it's a real viable solution. But maybe I'm way off on that. Maybe people have that figured out. It's just I don't have that figured out yet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So changing gears a little bit, I heard that you're a course creator. So as a course creator, what are you teaching people right now about AI and maybe about like using it as a co-pilot rather than a crutch?
Yeah, I don't really the way that I see it, at least right now for the time we're at right now, I feel like we still, like I said, we kind of still need to know this stuff, right? Like if I am telling cursor, hey, build me this thing. And it just happened to me today where it kind of like did some weird import with a component that created a promise on it. And I'm like, what are you doing that for? That I don't want that. Know?
Yeah.
And it's like we still need right now we're in this state of we still need to understand how everything works, but we're using AI to like help us move faster. You know what I mean? And that's how. So I think um we're just still in the same boat that we always were in. It's just maybe that we need to know, and this is what's hard for me personally is it's like I feel like I need to know more, right? Like I need to know more about what different AI tools do and what they do well, but I also still need to know the framework and how it works and how HTML works and how CSS works. And CSS is now like more powerful than it ever was, and JavaScript is too. So like, we're just gonna have a lot on our plates to like try to sift through every day, right? So
Well, that's interesting though, because I think you're right. Like we have all these new things that we need to learn, but I feel like also it means we really need to double down on some of these really foundational skills. So is there one or, a handful, a few that you really believe like now more than ever, you're saying, no, we need to double down and really learn this foundational skill, even though we have all this AI and all of this new tech coming
yeah.
out.
Yeah, to me, it's focused on the basics, the things that are not going anywhere, at least for the foreseeable future, in my opinion, would be like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, accessibility, even like understanding those core concepts. The framework, like, I don't think Angular is going anywhere anytime soon either, but it's built on top of all of those. So if you understand those foundational pieces, you'll be able to use that you know, for the foreseeable future, at least. So for me, and also I think if you don't if you don't focus on those, you kind of don't know where the framework ends and where the actual, you know, primitive languages exist and what their capabilities are, right? Like you kind of blend it all together. So I think understanding the basics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and accessibility, those are, you know, core in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like as it's also the like new that AI doesn't do really well or the out of the ordinary. Like it's almost a race to the mean. And
Yeah.
like a great, I guess, example of this is yesterday, no, Saturday. So 2 days ago. No, that's yesterday. Sorry. I spent 8 hours trying to have AI help me wire my furnace to my thermostat. And I blew 5 fuses and I got in a fight with it. It like insisted I do it a certain way. Come to find out, it wanted me to follow the manual, but the manual was wrong because the person who wired my house wired it a non-traditional way. And then I started thinking about that from code and I was like, oh, that's absolutely going to happen and does happen in code too. And so it's a good thing that, we understand code so that when it makes those mistakes, we can have some. But if
Yeah.
the next generation isn't learning that, and then they might end up blowing the fuse 5 times before
Yeah.
they figure out something's wrong.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, you can think about it even I've tried to generate AI images with the Angular logo in it. It will never get the newer Angular logo, even though the thing's been around for like 2 years now. It always gets the old logo. And you're like, come on, really? Like, and you'll tell it explicitly, use the new logo. Nope, never does it. So maybe it's changed, but this was like
No,
it.
I found the same thing. Even if you take a screenshot of it and say, "This is what I'm talking about."
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's one of the major frustration with stuff like that, where you're like, really? Come on.
There's that in the end dashes. I still can't for the life of me get it to stop putting end dashes in everything.
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
You know what I've done though? I've said like, okay, if I'm trying to use like Nano Banana to create an image, I've gone over to Chat GPT and I'll say, "This is what I'm trying to get my AI to create for me, and it's not giving it to me. How can I improve my prompt so that it will give me what I want?" And then it gives you the exact prompt. And then I've copied that, pasted it in, and sure enough, it works. And it gives me, it'll be like, well, it's not understanding this. That's too ambiguous for it. So you need to say this, this, and this.
Yeah,
So I don't try that. It's helped me, but
that is
still
cool. Yeah, that's a cool approach. Use AI to make AI easier.
All right. Well, so this is the Dev Life podcast. So we want to talk a little bit about life here at the end. So, Brian, how would you define an ultimate dev life in software development? And what are things you do to live your best dev life?
I think for me, it's important to work on things that you enjoy if you can. I mean, that's what's always been cool in my career is development, and I think most people get into like software development because they enjoy actually building stuff. So normally it's not too hard, but just focus on building things that you enjoy. I mean, even if in your day job you're working on stuff that you don't love, I mean, most of it's like a hobby outside of it too, right? So like, in off hours, occasionally messing around with things like you said, you're wiring in your thermostat to your firm. I've done stuff like that too. I like smart home stuff, right? So I've messed around with creating smart home apps and doing cool stuff with that's helped build my career, but also feeds like hobby, for myself. And to me, that's important. I don't know if everybody will feel that same way, but to me, that's important. Uh, I think also I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's really easy to get burnt out, especially now with like AI and stuff. And if you get burnt out, I feel like you got to take a break. You got to go do something that gets your mind off of it. For me, I really like playing basketball, and so I'm lucky that I'll just take off and go play basketball. And I forget about everything. I come back, I'm refreshed. I think you guys have probably experienced this too, but like you went to bed with a difficult problem and and you woke up in the middle of the night and you have the solution to your problem, right? Like so sometimes just getting away from it is almost the best form of development when you're in a funk. So yeah.
true. It's like your brain keeps working on it, even though you're not actively thinking about it.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm curious for our listeners, like what have you all found? Have you guys used Angular CDK? What are your thoughts and tips? How about ARIA, signal-based forms? Like, please share your thoughts, your questions, your comments down below the video here on YouTube. But Brian, thank you so much for being with us. It's been really fun to chat with you and just hear how you've been really optimizing your code and like making things really improved at your company with your team. If someone wanted to touch base with you, reach out to you, I know you give talks and presentations. So maybe if someone wanted to have you come present or just chat with you, like what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, just like probably through LinkedIn, I guess. That's probably the easiest way. Yeah, you can just LinkedIn or email, but LinkedIn's probably the easiest way.
Nice.
I'm not big on doing presentations. I have done presentations. It's not my like favorite thing to do. So I do like creating the content and stuff like that, or a podcast like this is cool. But yeah, presentations are not probably my favorite thing to do. So
Love public speaking.
oh yeah, it's a tough one for me.
What an engineer that doesn't love. But seriously, Brian, this has been awesome. So much great wisdom and ideas. And I'm certainly going to be looking into a lot of the stuff you shared. So thank you so much. And this is the Dev Life.
Thanks for having me.